Right now, as you are sitting there watching this, every single cell in your body is quietly losing its grip on something it desperately needs to stay alive, stay sharp, and keep you feeling like yourself. And the terrifying part? It has been happening for years, and nobody warned you. Today, we are talking about a molecule called NAD+, why its collapse after age 60 is responsible for so much of what you have been blaming on just getting older, and the specific form of vitamin B3 that clinical research from some of the most respected institutions in the world has shown can actually turn this around. This video could genuinely change how you feel every single morning. So stay with me, because you will want to hear all of it. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Every single week, I break down the latest evidence-based health research and translate it into real, practical guidance designed specifically for people over 60. Your doctor gets 15 minutes with you. I am giving you this whole video, so subscribe and let's get into it. I am Dr. Jacob Allen. I have spent more than 30 years working in cardiovascular and internal medicine, and the majority of my patients have been adults in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. And one of the things I have learned over those decades is this: most of what people assume is inevitable aging is not actually inevitable. It is biology, and biology, unlike birthdays, can sometimes be influenced. Let me start by introducing you to the molecule at the center of everything we are talking about today. It is called NAD+, which stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Go ahead and ignore the name if you want, because what matters is what it does. Your body produces this naturally, and it is involved in over 400 different enzymatic processes. Think about that for a second. 400. That is not a supporting role. That is the lead actor, the director, and half the production crew all at once. Here is what NAD+ does at its core. Your mitochondria, the tiny structures inside each of your cells that work like miniature power plants, cannot generate energy without it. Your DNA repair systems, the biological machinery that patches up the genetic damage your cells accumulate every single day just from being alive, run entirely on NAD+. The proteins that regulate inflammation, your sleep cycles, your metabolism, your stress response, they all depend on adequate NAD+ to function. You can think of it like the electrical current powering your entire body. When the voltage is high, everything runs smoothly. When it starts to drop, you do not get a flashing warning light. Systems just start underperforming, slowly and quietly, in ways that are very easy to write off as simply getting older. And here is where it gets genuinely alarming. Research published in Cell Metabolism and confirmed across multiple major institutions has shown that NAD+ levels in human tissue fall by roughly 50% between the ages of 40 and 60. Not a little. Half. By the time you are in your late 70s, some tissues are functioning with only about 30% of the NAD+ they had when you were in your prime. That is not a gradual dimming. That is someone slowly turning off the lights, room by room, while you are trying to live your life in the dark. And the consequences are very real. The exhaustion that persists no matter how many hours you sleep. The mental fog that rolls in on otherwise ordinary days, making it hard to focus or find words. The muscle weakness that has been creeping up on you without any obvious cause. The joint discomfort that feels worse than it should for someone your age. The sleep that leaves you feeling unrefreshed, even after a full night. These are not just the unavoidable side effects of having a birthday every year. A significant portion of what you are experiencing maps directly onto the biology of NAD+ depletion. That is not my opinion. That is documented, peer-reviewed science. Before I go any further, I want you to do one thing. Drop a comment below. Tell me your age and the one symptom you have been most tempted to chalk up to aging. Fatigue, brain fog, muscle weakness, something else entirely. I read every comment, and I think when we see the patterns together, it is going to tell us something worth knowing. Now, the vitamin that specifically addresses this is called nicotinamide riboside. You have probably never heard of it, and that is not your fault. It does not exactly roll off the tongue at dinner parties. It is a specialized form of vitamin B3, but calling it a simple B vitamin is a bit like calling a Formula One car a vehicle. Technically accurate, wildly underselling the point. Here is the critical distinction. Standard niacin, which is the form of B3 you might already be taking in a multivitamin, has to travel a long and inefficient metabolic road before it can contribute to NAD+ production. Nicotinamide riboside, by contrast, uses dedicated cellular transporters to get into your cells and converts to NAD+ through a dramatically shorter, more efficient pathway. It gets there faster. It gets absorbed more reliably. And here's the bonus. It does not cause the notorious skin flushing that makes a lot of people quit high-dose niacin within the first week. That flush is not dangerous, but it feels like a full-body sunburn from the inside, and most people decide they would rather just be tired. Let me tell you about Edward. He was 74, a retired engineer, sharp mind, practical guy, not someone prone to complaining. But for about 4 years, he had been carrying what he called a bone-deep exhaustion. Not the kind you can sleep off, the kind that just sits on your chest all day. His thyroid was fine, his iron was normal, his B12 was checked and rechecked. Every test came back in range, and yet there he was, needing to sit down halfway through making his morning coffee. His physician told him, with genuine kindness, that this was likely just the natural trajectory of getting older, and that he should pace himself and try to accept it. Edward accepted a lot of things in his life. He accepted this for about 6 months before he decided to try something different. He started taking 300 milligrams of nicotinamide riboside every morning with breakfast. 5 weeks later, he told me he completed his entire morning routine, walked the dog, cooked eggs, read the paper, without once needing to stop and rest. He said it almost made him suspicious because he had forgotten what that felt like. By the 3-month mark, his C-reactive protein, an inflammatory blood marker his doctor had been tracking, had measurably decreased. His doctor described the improvement as unexpected. Based on the research, it was anything but. And speaking of research, I want to walk you through what the clinical evidence actually looks like right now, because this is not supplement marketing dressed up in lab coats. This is genuine peer-reviewed science from institutions you would recognize. A 2024 study published in the journal Geroscience, conducted by researchers at Wake Forest University School of Medicine, ran a randomized, placebo-controlled trial of nicotinamide riboside in older adults with mild cognitive impairment. The results confirmed that NR supplementation safely and measurably raised NAD+ blood levels in participants, not anecdotally, measurably. A 2023 twin study published in Science Advances found that nicotinamide riboside supplementation improved what researchers call muscle mitochondrial biogenesis. In plain English, that means the muscle cells got better at producing energy. They also found positive changes in muscle satellite cells, which are the specialized cells your body uses to repair and rebuild muscle tissue. Why does that matter so much? Because nearly 40% of adults over the age of 65 experience meaningful muscle loss, something doctors call sarcopenia, and it is one of the biggest threats to long-term independence and quality of life. If your muscles cannot repair and recover effectively, everything else becomes harder. Everything. If you are still watching this and finding it useful, take 5 seconds and hit the subscribe button if you have not already. This kind of practical, research-based guidance is what this channel is built around, and I would love to keep bringing it to you every week. Now here is the finding from the research that I personally find most compelling. A pilot randomized controlled trial published in Geroscience in 2025 looked at sedentary adults over 55 with elevated blood pressure. When nicotinamide riboside supplementation was combined with regular aerobic exercise, the combination produced significantly better outcomes than exercise alone produced. Read that sentence again. NR did not replace exercise. It made exercise work better. It amplified the benefits of the lifestyle choices participants were already making. That is a fundamentally different proposition than most supplements on the market, which promise results without any effort on your part. This works because it partners with your own biology. Part of the reason for this is what NAD+ does to a class of proteins called sirtuins. You may have heard researchers refer to these as longevity proteins, and while that nickname might sound a little dramatic, the underlying biology backs it up. Sirtuins regulate how your cells respond to stress, manage inflammation, and oversee the DNA repair systems that keep your genetic material from accumulating unchecked damage. The problem is that sirtuins are entirely dependent on NAD+ to function. When NAD+ drops, sirtuins go quiet. They do not disappear, but they essentially go dormant, unable to do the jobs they are designed for. When you restore adequate NAD+ levels, those proteins become active again. They wake up. Research supported by the National Institute on Aging has linked sirtuin activation to several favorable cellular aging markers. The researchers in some of these trials have described the results as more significant than they initially expected. That is a sentence scientists do not write lightly. Now let us talk about your brain specifically, because this is where a lot of people over 60 have real concerns, and rightly so. Your neurons are among the most energetically demanding cells in your entire body. They burn through resources constantly, and they are especially vulnerable when NAD+ levels decline. A 2023 study published in Aging Cell found that oral NR supplementation raised NAD+ levels and also lowered certain biomarkers associated with neurodegenerative pathology. The researchers were clear and responsible in noting that this does not establish NR as a treatment for Alzheimer's disease or any other specific condition. But what it does suggest is that maintaining adequate NAD+ creates a more supportive biological environment for the aging brain to function, communicate, and repair itself. And at this point in the science, that is meaningful. Let me tell you about Gloria. She was 71, and she had watched her grip strength and her walking pace decline steadily over 2 years. Not dramatically, but consistently, in the way that starts to feel permanent if you are not careful. Her physical therapist was honest with her and said maintaining current function was a realistic goal, not improving. Maintaining. Gloria added nicotinamide riboside to the light resistance training routine she was already doing 3 times a week. She did not make any other major changes. After 12 weeks, her functional strength assessments had improved enough that her therapist revised the goal entirely, from maintenance to modest recovery. Gloria told me it felt like someone had slowly turned up a dimmer switch she did not even know had been turned down. That image stuck with me. A 2025 systematic review and meta-analysis published in the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle analyzed multiple randomized controlled trials of NR and NMN supplementation in adults over 60 and found evidence of positive effects on physical performance, particularly in combination with exercise. That is not one study. That is a synthesis of many studies pointing in the same direction. So let me give you the exact protocol, because I know that is what you are actually here for. The starting dose supported by the majority of clinical trials in older adults is 300 milligrams of nicotinamide riboside per day. Some trials have used 500 to 1,000 milligrams with acceptable safety profiles, but my strong recommendation is to start at 300 milligrams and stay there for at least the first 8 weeks before thinking about any adjustment. Starting lower than you need to is a much better position to be in than starting higher and wondering why you feel off. Take it in the morning with breakfast. NAD+ is tied to cellular energy production, and for some people, taking it later in the day can subtly interfere with their ability to fall asleep. Food also reduces the chance of mild nausea, which is the most frequently reported side effect, and which is usually temporary. When you are shopping for a product, look specifically for nicotinamide riboside chloride, or products using the branded ingredient True Niagen. That is the form used in the majority of published clinical research and carries the strongest evidence base. On the label, look for third-party testing certifications. You want to see USP verified, NSF certified, or informed sport marks. These are not decoration. They tell you that what is printed on the label is actually what is inside the bottle, which in the supplement world is not something you can always assume. A quality month's supply should run you around $30. If a product is dramatically cheaper, that should give you pause. If it is dramatically more expensive without clear justification, that should give you equal pause. Commit to at least 8 to 12 weeks of consistent use before making any judgment about results. Energy and sleep improvements often begin showing up in the first 4 to 6 weeks. Changes in muscle function and inflammatory markers tend to take longer. This is not a product you try for 2 weeks and decide does not work. Give your biology the time it actually needs. One critical point before I let you go, and please do not skip this. If you take blood thinners, chemotherapy agents, or immunosuppressant medications, speak with your physician before starting any new supplement, including this one. Nicotinamide riboside has an excellent safety profile in otherwise healthy older adults across the published clinical literature, but your doctor needs to know what you are taking. No exceptions. A supplement with an excellent safety record and a drug interaction you did not disclose is still a problem. And finally, one piece of advice that could make the difference between decent results and genuinely transformative ones. Nicotinamide riboside is not a magic standalone fix. It works best in context. Pair it with regular physical activity, especially any form of resistance or strength training. Even light resistance work like Gloria was doing. Aim for at least 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight each day. These are not optional accessories. They are the biological partners that allow what NR does at the cellular level to translate into real improvements you can actually feel when you get out of bed in the morning, when you walk up a flight of stairs, when you sit down at the end of the day and actually feel like you did something. NAD+ decline is one of the most thoroughly documented and consistently observed hallmarks of biological aging, and nicotinamide riboside is the most clinically studied, most accessible, and safest way currently available to address it. 300 milligrams every morning, third-party tested product, 8 to 12 weeks of consistent use, paired with movement and adequate protein. Drop a comment below and tell me which symptom you have been blaming on aging. Fatigue, brain fog, muscle weakness, poor sleep. I genuinely want to know. And if this video gave you something real today, please share it with someone over 60 who deserves to know that what they have been feeling does not have to be permanent. Subscribe if you have not already, because this is what we do here every week. Evidence-based, practical health information, designed specifically for people at this stage of life. I am Dr. Jacob Allen. Take care of yourself, because you absolutely deserve to feel well.